has a magazine company called Hammock Inc. He's the founder and CEO of. But I really learned about him when I first started blogging. And Tennessee has a lot of good bloggers, and I was trying to find out who the bloggers were in Tennessee. And I quickly discovered Rex, and he has a small business blog that he blogs a lot, but my favorite one is his personal blog, his Rex blog. And so if you've never read Rex blog, you should read it. It's one of the more entertaining blogs that you can find. We were talking last night about he was an early adopter of Twitter, so he has his Twitter username is just R. You have to be pretty early.
That's going to be on my tombstone, by the way.
At R.
Yeah.
But we've heard about, in our days so far, we've heard about how big media, USA Today, are using mobile and tablets, how grassroots organizations are using mobile, and how mid-sized newspapers are using tablets and mobile strategies. Rex is going to give us a little bit of different perspective from the magazine world, and so I'll let you take it away.
Thanks, Jack, and I appreciate everyone staying till this. And Bill's not here, so I get to pick on him without him here. Is Bill left? So y'all just, I warned him. I actually wanted to also welcome you to Nashville and say that Bill is not making the most money out of iPads, that Griffin Technology, which is just about a mile away from here, is. And this guy, I don't know, if you're probably all familiar with Griffin in one way or another. I'm going to show you one of the cool devices they have, but they make all these accessories to iPads and iPhones. This guy, Colonel Pendleton, is in Shelbyville or Lewisburg, maybe, down near where they make Jack Daniels. And these iPad cases are hand-tooled, made by him. He used to make horse saddles, $700. The guy is, and he's breaking it in, all hand signed, hand numbered. But they also have a lot of other neat things, like a device, a case that is military grade, and they're advertising it like this. They're dropping it off a 3-story building into a vat of maple syrup. Your iPhone 4, oh my God. So I welcome you to Nashville on behalf of them to, those are from Waffle House, by the way. Okay, yeah, my name is Rex Hammock. I am at R. I was telling Corey, I think, last night that I was a habitual early tire kicker, so this is rex.tumblr.com, and what this is. And yes, I did, this is Rex blog, which has been around since August of 2000. And I started blogging, fortunately, before I knew what blogging was, so I didn't have to have a business model or any of those kinds of things. And didn't know how to blog then or now. And this is actually a better than R is at small business. I have that Twitter name, and I have 10,000 people who follow me here. But I had a failed business, but I kept the domain name. And there's about 4 years ago, started a wiki, and that's why I was kind of giving Mr. Siegenthaler a little bit, because I hang out with those wiki people and go to Wikimania, every year. So it's a very interesting group of those people who create wiki. But we have a wiki called smallbusiness.com that I am head wiki wrangler. So I live in that a lot. Had a business plan with 35 people, and now it's me. So the overhead. This is a profitable business because it's just me in the evenings that does that. Okay, my history with the iPad, July 22nd, 2006. That would be 5 years ago. There was a story about Apple was going to have an e-book, a patent that they had filed, and I said, no one who's had been around Apple for as long would expect them to have an e-book. However, you would expect a device called the Knowledge Navigator, which anybody remember? Anybody go back that far? John Scully actually conceived it. If you're a hardcore Apple geek fanboy, you would have remembered that Knowledge Navigator was around. So I said, you know, what I predict is there's not going to be an ebook reader, but it will be like an 8x10 or so iPod that has a web browser and iSat and Wi-Fi access and built-in iSat that come very close to this 25-year-old concept. But it's not going to be for academics like the Knowledge Navigator was. And you could talk to the Knowledge Navigator, and it had a little geeky, dorky guy doing it. And I said, it's just not going to have that goofy guy that's on it. So that was in 2006. In 2007, in November, when the Kindle came out, I said, I don't want a Kindle, although I got one and actually still love it. This is what I want. And I kind of mocked this up and said, I want something that looks like that. That was in 2007. In 2008, about January of 2009, when it was announced, I said, I predict that within 45 days, this is what's going to be released, and I listed all of the specs and everything. Now, there was a lot of rumors, but I chose the rumors basically what I wanted on the device, and so when it came out, you know, I was not surprised. I've been predicting it for a long, long time and envisioning it and thinking about it, and as a content producer, I've been living with this device for years and years, waiting for it, knowing that all these technologies had to catch up with a vision that had been around a long time. Now, this is where I'm going to disagree with Bill on how people use the iPhone and the iPad. Now, they may say in surveys that they read or that they do this or that, and it may very well be true. But if you analyze the iPad apps that are being downloaded, you discover that the green is news. These are not news reading devices. I mean, I am operating the projector, my computer, with an app called Remote, and I can, so there are all these different things that we can do other than read. Now, I'm obsessed with reading. I read more today. I have discovered through the iPad that used to think I was a book lover, but I've discovered I'm a reading lover. So I read lots more, maybe, and buy lots more. But that was last year. So I decided this morning when I just wondered, okay, let's look at that just today. So this morning I screen grabbed the top 100, I think it's down to something in the 40s, but I looked at 100. Of the paid apps, I couldn't find any consumption, which he also said that it's a consumption device. I think we're over that because most of the things have to do with creating content rather than consuming. The National Geographic Atlas is the only paid app in the top 100. There are some from some Hearst properties that I'll talk about in a minute. However, if you look at the free iPads, news works here. I mean, news is downloaded there. And we all know that, frankly, these are all freemium models where it's a free app, but then you have to pay for the subscription. So I'm not really sure these should be. We're going to talk some about these, but I went backwards. So you can just swipe like that, and you see the little picture of what the slide looks like. But one of these top 50, and I'm going to refer to your website, is called Zeit. And the Washington Post sued it this morning, along with other people, for being for copyright infringement. Now, how many of you use on your iPads if you have Flipboard? So, all right. Some could argue that the argument that is being used against Zeit could also be used against Flipboard, although Flipboard has lots of money and cut deals with certain publishing companies. But when the day that Flipboard came out, I blogged about, as a publisher, I saw it as being a complete, you know, this is being called. And the CEO of, out of all nobody, I have 12 people who read my blog. Thank you. I mean, it's you're nice to say Jack's one of them. So that, but Mike McHugh, the CEO of Flipboard, emailed me, and we had an hour-long conversation, and I told them, I don't believe you when you say every publisher everybody loves what you're doing, because you are basically you're displaying copyrighted, and frankly, you're doing a better job than they are of doing it. So, but he's in Silicon Valley, and very popular, charismatic guy with a great product, and he has now cut some deals with some publishers. So all those slides I sort of threw in as a response a little bit to what Bill said this morning, but I'm also going to follow up with that, because we've been talking about things that, like if you're a large media company, you could do, but if we start looking at the magazine world, you're going to find some things that that correspond more to what do you do on a no budget or a low budget. So, because the magazine industry has learned that in spades. Now, the first thing you have to do, it's a nice toy that we've learned. A guy told me that on a plane last week, that the iPad, he saw me and I said, well, what do you think? He said, it's a nice toy. And so many people have said that to me, but first, we need to talk about what the magazine industry is. And just like the magazine industry or the newspaper industry is not just the Dallas Morning Times and the Washington Post, but all of the newspapers out there. The magazine industry is really made up of a lot of different types of business. Magazines can be a business model, classic, the ones we think about. But more than that, magazines can support business models. Now, when I talk about that, Vanderbilt and every university in America publishes a magazine. It's not a business model. They're not making money from the magazine, but it supports the development work and the loyalty and all those recruiting things that they do. We publish all of these magazines for associations like the Daughters of the American Revolution or the NFIB, National Federation of Independent Business. These are magazines that may have advertising, but their purpose is not to be a classic business model, a magazine business model. So think about it in terms of, as I walk through this, and we go, well, how do you make money from this? That there are companies that need to create apps and things because they fit into that, their content is their business model. Consumer is typically advertising and circulation, much like the news business. But in the magazine world, there's a large industry called B2B, business to business, that advertising has become less than 50% of the revenue, and circulation for most of the business to business magazines has never existed because they're controlled circulation. If you're a specifying engineer at a plant, you get specifying engineer weekly or whatever, So it's always been about distribution. If you think about it, it's been like the web. You give away the content free because you can aggregate an audience of people who are very hard to get to with a very specialized. What that business has evolved to in the last 15 years or so is to to data products. How big is the industry? Where's the opportunities? Things that advertisers or people who want to sell into the markets. Events. Every trade show in America almost is got some tie to probably events are one of the largest B2B media revenue streams now. And a lot of the niche, smaller B2B magazines are very early. They almost look like ad agencies because they're helping, but they understand a very tiny market and there are very few advertisers, so they're really playing a role of a market maker. They're helping buyers and sellers, and that's their business. And it's a very, it looks like a magazine media company, but it's more like a business model when you have to be in a small market and you're putting together everything that you can, and you can say, okay, events can be something that we do, and we can help, like the Tennessean has a department now that helps small businesses advertise not just on their site or in the paper, but on sites, and do other kinds of advertising as well. So newspapers are becoming that too. The other kinds of magazines, which frankly is the largest number of magazines, can be a premium of membership. They can be a benefit of ownership. If you own a BMW, you get BMW magazine. There are loyalty affinity magazines. There's direct marketing, and like a lot of catalogs now look more like magazines. So that leads us to, if you have those two different kinds of businesses and magazines, what is a magazine app? Because there's a lot of people out there saying this is a magazine app, including Flipboard says it is a social magazine app. Well, okay, that means we got to say, what's a magazine? And I'm just 3 slides to talk about the difficulty in what is a magazine. This is the 4th most famous magazine cover of all time, by the way, according to, I keep getting tweeted on there's a bug in here. Twitter keeps coming over my, it's not about size, or, we think magazine is a certain size, but magazines come in lots of different sizes. I said, Twitter's bothering me. And it's not about news, whereas you can talk about journalism and news, and believe me, there are a lot. This is my favorite magazine as a child and my favorite magazine as an adult. There's bookends of my life. So magazines can appeal to different parts of us. But last slide before I really get into apps. What is a magazine? And I've thought about this for a long time. This is about as good as I can get to it. There's a recurrence and consistency in a magazine. So there is something about it that it's not a one-off thing. You expect to have a continuing relationship. Both the editorial focus is recurring, and the design and architecture is. There's some conventions too. One of the conventions is format. Over time, things like the cover, and now we're calling architecture, interface, and navigation. We also call magazines push media because they go out to, they don't just wait for people. There's table of contents. Typically in modern magazines have adopted a lot of the things that women's service magazines invented. That's those short articles at the beginning, and then edit well at the middle, and then some articles at the end. 40% of people read magazines from the back to the front. That could be made up, but I've heard it for years, so I always like to spread it. I'm going to come back to this. There's a focus, and this is important. Unlike general news, there is typically, with successful magazines, a very tight focus, a very niche-oriented, don't cover a lot of, unless you're Newsweek or Time or other magazines that are having a difficulty right now, you are centered on one passion, one community, one marketplace, one niche. So you are serving people that are very committed, maybe not to your magazine, but they're committed to that topic. Now, that has some correlation to people and the towns in which they live too. Then there's some content that we think is, okay, makes some magazine. There's usually some data, some intelligence, some insight, columns, context. So there are these things, and they are, how do you take all those things and you make an app, and it somehow is that thing, and we can call it a magazine? How do you take the legacy conventions and turn it into? And that's a challenge that the last year we've been able to see go across the board, people trying to define what is a magazine app. And basically the answer is anything somebody wants to call a magazine app is a magazine app. I wish I could say, but I'm going to show you some examples of magazine apps that are very just across the board. In my opinion, more important than format, more important than content, more important than this, the thing that will ultimately wait, well, first thing I was going to say, a lot of people have just said that you just jam all that stuff together and you throw it into, you just, and that's a magazine out, I call those replicants. Anybody here know that word? What these are what's the movie? Oh, okay, okay, Blade Runner. Blade Runner replicant is a human. But it's better. It's got it's got video, and so it's better. It's like we're replicating a magazine, but we're going to enhance it and make it better. So you can see I'm not a big fan because I'm derogatory about that. I think this is the key, the most important thing. The niche, the passion, if you do apps branded with your magazine or with your thing that serves the passion of the people, that's to me more important than does it have all the things that I find in a magazine? Does it have all the columns? Does it replicate? And okay, I'm going to show you some examples. The first one I'm going to show you is on the web. Oh wait, I was supposed to, because I've just had wait. Let's see if I can hit it here. No. All right. I'm gonna go back over. I'm gonna go ahead and switch over here. I was going to show you a magazine that that Google actually launched in the UK. Help me out. Can you? I feel. Oh, here we go. I might be able to get it. Help me out. Can you see this? Can you look at here? we had it working just. Is it? It's burn a hole in my no.
Memory button.
Okay. This is a magazine that if you were on the website, you could see a digital version, but 1,500 issues of the magazine are printed, and they're hand delivering them to certain of their clients in London. And but instead of doing an app, and frankly, instead of doing a digital version of the magazine, they did it a PDF version and used a program called ISSUU, which is a PDF viewer that's very nice. It gives you a sense that it's a magazine. Look at it if you haven't. But doing it in a digital magazine was sort of after. But again, this is a magazine, not. It scared a lot of people at the beginning that Google would actually be producing a magazine. But this is one of those magazines that supports a business model. It's a very engineering, it's about data, and I think some of you would find it interesting. But it has a very interesting design in that it's not a website. Clearly, it is designed to be read with. Okay, Bill, I'm going to have to go back and anything and defend what. But let me just show you the interesting way in which they optimize the website so that each article would, and if you use an iPad, you can double click there so that the columns are one column wide, very readable on the website. So
You can put it flat.
I think didn't it have, oh, okay. So that's an example. That's a web app version, but it's a magazine, and it's a website designed to look like a print magazine. So 1,500 are digitally printed, I'm sure, handed by hand to their clients. They offered it as a PDF read through this really nice reader. They have the website that is optimized for display on their web, through just the regular browser, although it looks kind of funny on the web through a regular browser, but it's designed so you can just do that double tap thing. That's an interesting phenomenon that we're going to see, because in the magazine world, I mean, the people that are marketing products to magazines, especially the smaller magazines, especially in the B2B, tend to be companies that have been around for about 7 or 8 years as digital magazine companies. Companies like Texterity and Nextbook. I wanted to just show you this one from Nextbook. They have a magazine app. Let me make sure. Does that say that? I'm going to have to. Does it say read right here? Okay. It should just come up. It's not doing it, but yeah. Oh, there we go. That comes up. It's a somewhat enhanced PDF idea. They've had this for the browser and use on your computer for a long time. They only have about a 20% open rate, or that's been our experience when we do digital magazines that are announced by email. But what this company and another similar company, or a couple of other similar companies have, is they have an audit relationship with the ABC, and so that the people who subscribe to these are actually counted in the accreditation. There are other probably simpler, cheaper, better ways to get content out, but they have the tie-in. So if your publication is audited, that's a lot of folks go with this. I again have the experience, to me, is much like a PDF. However, there are things like the ability to tap on. You can't see it here, but there are words that are highlighted in yellow. You can tap on those. They'll take you to a website. So it has links in it. That would be about the only thing beyond however, a lot of smaller B2B publishers are using that because, and others are using, like R.R. Donnelley, and most of the large printers have a version of that too. So when they will print your thing, and then they will give you a version, and you can distribute that. Let me point some of the big iron early. This is my favorite. This is a. Did I freeze again? No. Bonnier, who owns Popular Science and some other things, they actually purchased from other folks, is an early mover, and they have a lab in London, and they have done some really creative things. However, in their creativity, they have forgotten the user. I mean, tremendously. It's like these things have every bell and whistle that you can imagine, but they have thrown out any sense that, hey, we've been using screen devices for the last 20 years, and we should have some sense of how to navigate around. And even the iPad, some of the conventions, like the ability to tap in the middle to get some cues of where to go, don't even work in this. So you have to learn that, oh, there's some little lines over here, and oh, that means table of content, I guess, or if I tap there, there's something, but no, nothing's happening. So, oh, I can push up with 2 fingers. I have to use 2 fingers to make this come up. So you can imagine people who are in the usability part of the web, or bloggers, or people that they just rip this to shreds. And I'm going to be on I'm moderating a panel Monday with the developer of this site, and they fortunately have done some stuff that isn't this bad, but believe me, this, in terms of looking really, it's just self-absorbed design and technology, and it takes 45 minutes to download an issue, and it just makes me angry to use. So unfortunately, a lot of the magazine apps created by some of the larger companies I'm going to mention, because as was mentioned earlier today, while the newspaper companies have not come together to try to figure this out, the magazine 800-pound gorillas have come together to try to figure it out, and I'm going to touch on that in just a second. But I do want to show you a couple of things that are important, because the only the idea that your news app or content app is what the news or content app that is going to be used by the reader or the user of the iPad may not be there's a lot of hacking going on, and some of it is well-financed hacking, like the ability, like Flipboard, if you're familiar with it, connects into your. It started out by connecting into your like Twitter feed, or and all of the links that people are making to Twitter. They actually go out and they pull in the photographs and articles in many cases, unless it's so that you can either read it here or you can actually read it what it looks like on the web. This was one of Apple's apps of the year last year. They're calling it a social magazine, because the content originally was coming from your either Facebook friends, the things that they were recommending, or some things that they had curated. What they've added recently, and it's getting closer to being kind of questionable in my mind, is now if you have an RSS reader, if you have set up on Google Reader the articles that you want, instead of like seeing them as line, like you would look in they're using the API from Google Reader, and this is basically what you've subscribed to via RSS on your Google Reader. But they're turning it into articles or pages that take the content pointed to, the photos pointed to, bringing it back and displaying it in the context of something that looks like a magazine and flips. That's exactly what the concept behind Zeit, the company that was sued by some of you in the room today, that's the idea about what they were doing. And frankly, they're doing it a little bit even. They're more blunt and blatant about it. You can do your RSS reader. You can. I'm going to pick Tennessee down here because you can do it by topics. It's more topical then. But let's see how close they come. I know that some of these are going to be. Excuse me. This was technology. I know they were pulling in the Tennessean feed. Right here. Here's one right here that's, I see. Oh, they have changed it. After the suit today, they're now pulling in your web page. Until today, they were just, it looked like their content. And which does bring me to the next thing that you're going to be dealing with very soon, because the folks in the magazine world have discovered that the folks in the magazine world have, let me just show you a couple of, before I do that, let me show you a couple of things that have, I think, really worked to take sort of that, not try to replicate content, but try to find something unique that works, that a magazine brand is tied to. I don't know if y'all seen the EW10, I think it's called EW10, but it's like the 10 things this week that you just have to see. You have to, and it's, I mean, that's it. That's as simple. It's not, and it's one of the. It is the in terms of apps that that magazine companies do, is the #1 most downloaded, and it's a very simple idea. 10 most you got to do things of the week. To me, that's a very simple idea, but a great. It's the kind of thing that works. Okay, how many of you are familiar with Instapaper? Great. What?
Love it.
And love it?
My favorite.
But how does the company feel about it?
I'm actually trying to figure out how to integrate it into the site.
Yep.
Because it's a feature that we actually don't have on our site. And what's so appealing to me is the fact that, if you have your app refreshed, that you can read all of this content offline. And I actually wish the app would update. I want to tweet them a feature request and say, please make your app auto refresh. That way, if you forget to refresh your app, if you're somewhere if you're on a plane, you can read everything
Yep.
that you save later. And I know that advertising is very much interested in moving from desktop web to mobile, and this is that exact product.
Well, it's only a guy, so you can tweet him and he will answer. I promise. If you know Tumblr, the guy the engineer on Tumblr started this as a side project, has now left and is doing this. The idea, and I'm sorry it's fuzzy, but if you're reading an article, magazine anywhere, and you want to read it later, there's a little bookmark that you hit. Read it later. It goes to the print page, so it looks for the full article, not the article of the section that you're reading on, and it basically scrapes your page and reformats it, takes all the ads out, takes all of the, and as Corey said, it saves it on 3 places. It syncs. It saves it on in my case, it saves it on my iPhone, my my iPhone, my iPad, the web. An argument that I'm going to make is that the iPad has shown that we can read on the web. There's this belief that has been around, and frankly, that you can't do long-form content on the web, and so the USA Today has led us in doing small, and that's great. But what we've discovered is maybe it's not that we can't read long articles on the web. We don't want to when we're sitting at a desk and it's in our computer. But if we have a nice device and we can sit in a lazy boy, then maybe we do like to read. And there are sites that support Instapaper, called a site like longform.org, which is basically a social site. You can tie into it with everything. But it's people looking for great magazine articles, primarily, that are both contemporary and go back through the life of every magazine that's online, from Esquire, all the great stuff that's on the web, that's 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 words, and you can go to those, get recommendations, hit a button, they go into Instapaper. So Instapaper is not just about reading the New York Times, which it displays New York Times articles like this, and it's great. And I wish, and what they need to do, is cut deals with folks like you so that you will let them do this, but there will be ads and a revenue share. What they're trying to do now is, they, in a site called Readability, which is, if you use a Safari browser on a Mac, there's a little button in the URL, in the address that has an R on it. If you click on that, it will turn any page. I wish I could do it. I think I've frozen up. It'll turn any page into something that looks like that so that you can read. I mean, basically, it takes your page, the Tennessean or the Washington Post, finds the column of content, blows out all the ads, and makes it display like that. The browser Safari has it built in as a feature, but they use some code that's an open source code called Readability. To me, this is like saying, if you want to talk to me about enhancing a magazine, don't talk to me about video. Talk to me about great writing that goes deep into something that is engaging and provides context, and make it comfortable for me to read when I want to read it. If you want to embed video, fine. But I think that there's a big market for just great reading in a very readable site. So, but that's my bias. And last thing I wanted to show you that some magazines are doing that I think are just, has anybody downloaded this Map Madness from ESPN? This would, I guess, be a TV station, but I think of ESPN, the magazine, as a magazine. It's a great educational, game that any of you could knock off probably and do very cheaply. In this case, it's really teaching kids geography, but it's throwing up, this is a mascot, and I think it was LSU. Was that who it was? Point where it goes. And you go, you have to go down there, bang. If you get the right place, you get certain points and you compete with each other. I mean, all it is like, it's appealing to their sports love, but to teach them geography. Now, that to me is like a great thing. Plus, it's also just addicting them even more to the ESPN brand when they're playing that game. All right, let me go back over. Let's hope this works. Yes. Okay, so here are the lessons that we've learned, some of them. As we were talking about earlier, the newspaper business really hasn't come together in a consortium, but the magazine folks have. There's I think it's called Next Media, Next Issue Media. Condé Nast, Hearst, Meredith, News Corp, and Time Inc. There's also an unofficial group that are trying to develop standards on what is an app, but they're trying to figure out lots of things, pricing, formats, platform, CMS, just a whole lot of things. But it's difficult when you're these companies and you've got deep pockets and you're deciding what a magazine app is, and then you've got that entire industry that I described that doesn't have the resources that they have. So they're trying to serve other publishers and themselves as well. They've got a former CEO of Hulu, or not of TiVo, that's running the company, and they've now in about their 14th or 15th month of about to be ready to launch. So we'll all believe it when we see it. Year one is, it's not easy even if everybody's working together. The second thing we've learned is a magazine app is different than a magazine. I don't have a 4,000-word user agreement or whatever in a magazine that I have to explain. If you want to read my magazine, you've got to agree to all of these different things. Nor do I have, as Virgin Magazine's project app, which I tried to download this morning to show you, but it crashed my iPad. This is the how to use the magazine app instructions that you get at the very first of that, which led a friend of mine who's a former creative director at nytimes.com, Coy Van, to develop a how to use a magazine, again, interesting things that we have learned. And one of the reasons I call this is the readers decide. I went into this year thinking, wow, this is going to be great. We're going to be able to integrate video. We're going to be able to do this. And frankly, I'm a big believer in all that and the right place and the right thing. But I've also discovered, gee, magazines have a lot of good reading. And there's a lot of great writing out there. And wow, this is also a good platform for reading. So you've discovered basically a hacker mentality out there saying if the magazines aren't going to do this for us, we're going to create a content, an app so we can read magazines the way that we want to do that. So like I said, longform.org is really, I mean, you go in, you register, it finds friends, and bang, people are recommending you articles that are from the 1968, Esquire right after the Chicago riots. I mean, and this is great, incredible that we've just missed because we don't go to the library and read that stuff. I think when we look back and we go, wow, what changed things for us? One of the things we will look at is the Kindle Singles storefront on the Kindle store. Anybody know, heard of it? Anybody? Okay. Kindle or Amazon announced this last year, launched it just a few weeks ago, and said, there's a lot of content that is a typical book's over 50,000 words. A magazine article, a long magazine article is 5,000 words. But there's this number of words that's less than 50,000 and more than 5,000 or 10,000 that involves a lot of really great nonfiction, a lot of short stories, a lot of self-published things about local, guides to certain things that if we had, that it would be great as ebooks if we could offer an easy way for those to be published, an easy way for those to be uploaded, and we offered a cut of 80-20. The writer gets 80, we get 20. The publisher gets 80. So there are now publishing companies that are trying to do this for writers. There are self-publishers who are saying, gee, I've got a collection of short stories. Or there are a lot of people who write for the New Yorker who sold a first-time right, whose own stories that maybe got 5,000 words, but they have 30,000 words that they've written that they now have a market for with millions of people coming to so they've set up the whole distribution process, the way to market it, the way to upload it, the way that I think, as I'm going to say, I'm going to come back to these because the slide that I wanted to end with is if you, okay, I know everybody's read the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. The Michael Bloomquist was a magazine publisher, and so I only read it, because of them. But if you read it through the eyes of a magazine publisher, you start going, wow, he's describing what a business model is for magazines in a digital age, because this part of it is a big investigation and they're going to bust these people, and they did. But at the end of the book it says when the magazine came out, now this was written 10 years ago, when the magazine came out, they published basically a short run print version of it under their own imprint. So the magazine created a book imprint. They also at the same time had all of this background material that they developed into a PDF and delivered from their website. Today, they would be selling this through the Kindle Singles, and they would have a book that they would be selling through the Kindle Singles as well. So when I read this, I went, and I heard the Kindle Singular. That is a model for serving a segment of readers that really want to be passionate and understand and have context about a story that makes sense for. But there are other things that make sense for magazine publishers and other content that go beyond the traditional news apps by looking at what are people buying, what are in the top 100 apps that people are downloading. And again, and this is where I was going to disagree with Bill, that now that you're here to defend yourself, there's a lot of things that aren't consumption on this list. And there are a lot of magazine companies, especially in the B2B world, that are packaging tools. There are a lot of companies like Rodale that's in the running and all these that are their idea of magazines apps have GPS mapping, trail ride kinds of things. They are selling apps that are tool oriented that are doing that. So the ability to serve your market with unique digital products that serve the passion that they come to you for is where I believe, be they games, be they atlases, be they, please come up with Angry Birds, then we'll all, have that. Or be they like the EW Must list. It's these niche kinds of products that I think we will find a lot of opportunity to, in addition to the large, more news readers. So I'll stop there and take any questions, or how are we doing time-wise? It's late. I know it's really late, so.
Business question, of course. How are the magazine apps doing? Because I'm hearing that they're dropping off.
They're doing as I predicted, the iPad would exist 5 years ago. I also predicted that, as Bill observed earlier, things like The Daily there's no way that can last. It's got a burn rate that's, you can't, and no one's buying it. They would be telling you how many people were buying it, but they're doing everything they can to avoid telling you anything about anything related to the money. So, and I just heard the guy speak for an hour, who's the editor, and he was avoiding everything. There's a lot of tire kicking. I mean, people who love iPads and love magazines will download anything once. But there's very little things that are traction. But products like the National Geographic Atlas is a perennial seller for $4.99, and they've probably made several $1 million on, and it's really cool. You got this little globe and you can touch any spot in the place, and you have articles that they did. So a very clever thing that could be viewed as an educational. Again, the more you can tie it around a passion, those are picking up. Hearst is doing a good job of using brands like Elle and Cosmopolitan to do what they're calling content extensions, not brand extensions. They're saying, okay, we have this expertise in this. Let's create something that helps girls put on makeup or whatever, and creating apps around those types of things. The replication, and I think that's probably what you're talking, the replicant things that are heavy. Frankly, the best-selling newsreader in the top 100 is USA Today's. There's nothing, I think, is there anything that comes even close that you would consider? I mean, Flipboard is right behind U.S. News. I mean, not U.S. News, but USA Today. So I believe that the model of a more lightweight doesn't just stop the world when it downloads, like USA Today is much more going to work than the bells and whistles that you see on a Wired magazine, Wired.com app. Love it after it's loaded, but boy, then you have to figure out how to get around, and it's just. I have a friend, the guy that did the USA or the How to Read a Magazine is called Co-Event. He has a website called Subtraction.com, and he has some great, he's a person who's, the way the New York Times looks is his vision. He's a very grid designer, wonderful designer, and his analysis of the design of most of the early magazine apps is dead on from my standpoint. And it will be interesting to see, but you have publications who have hundreds of thousands of subscribers on print, and they may have a few thousand online, and it just is not, the numbers aren't working for me yet.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Or Paige used to work with me, so she can tell you I was a geek a long time ago. Thanks you so much. I'm glad. Welcome to Nashville, and thanks. And Jack, thanks. One last thing. This is my iPad case, and it has a Nashville connection. A company called 12th South in Charleston, and I love taking this. You open it up and you have your iPad, but it looks like an old leather-bound book. And you go into a coffee shop, and people go, "Oh, that's very nice. He's reading a real book." And then you open it up, and it's like.
I actually wanted to get both of you guys up here and just see if you would